Hey guys, so today I'm reviewing the Viltrox 23mm 1.4 for Fuji and seeing if it lives up to shooting a 35mm prime on a full frame. What's up everybody, hope you're well. Today I'm looking at the Viltrox 23mm 1.4 for Fuji mount. Just to get out of the way, I bought this lens with my own money, I haven't been sent it by Viltrox, I'm not sponsored or affiliated with them in any way. This is a purely my opinion review. I recently made the switch to Fuji and one of my biggest concerns was whether I'd be able to get the same kind of shallow depth of field from equivalent lenses as I can on full frame. I'm primarily a wedding photographer, and for weddings I usually have a 35mm glued to my primary camera most of the time, and that's usually set to f2 for most of the day. So I bought the 23mm 1.4 on the logic that on a 1.5 times crop sensor I should get roughly 35mm field of view and about f2 equivalent aperture that I get on a full frame in terms of the actual depth of field that's present in the shot. A sort of unfortunate side effect of shooting 1.4 on a crop sensor versus full frame is your exposure is still the same. So even though I'm looking to get equivalent f2 visible depth of field from this equivalent distance that I'd have to shoot at 23mm on the crop sensor in bright sunlight, where I was shooting f2 on a full frame body and just about getting away with 1/8000th of a second shutter speed, or maybe just having to bump my aperture up to 2.2 or 2.5, shooting at 1.4 on a crop body is going to mean I have to push my shutter speed above 1/8000th. But the bonus is on the mirrorless Fuji X-T3 is the electronic shutter allows you to go all the way to 1/32,000th of a second, which is great as long as you're not shooting like fast motion or under artificial lights. You shouldn't see any adverse effects from that. Okay, so let's take a look at the Viltrox. It's a well-built lens, it's mostly made of metal. The aperture ring is clickless, which may or may not be to your taste. However, it's worth noting that as you click through the aperture settings, it doesn't change the aperture smoothly. It's a bit like a focusing step motor, it steps through the settings, which is going to be a bugbear for if you're trying to adjust your aperture smoothly for video. You're not going to be able to do that with this lens. So the manual focus ring is nice and smooth, it's well dampened, but again, it's controlling a step motor, so there's no hard stops at either end of the focus. Some people don't mind that, I don't mind it too much. Am I going to be manually focusing with this lens that often? Probably not. It's less of a tactile feel than a fully mechanical focus ring, so you've just got to make that call if that's something that you're okay with. Okay, that's enough about the build quality, we want to know about the image quality. So just a quick rundown of the kind of basic things. At 1.4, it's nice and sharp in the centre. There is a bit of fringing in high contrast areas, but that's to be expected at extreme apertures. It's not too bad and you can fix it in post. Also at wider apertures there is a bit of vignetting. I took some very quick and unscientific shots at various apertures to demonstrate this. Here it is at 1.4 where it's quite strong. f2 and it improves. By 2.8 it's pretty much gone. And then at f4 it is gone. So that's pretty much all the negative stuff out of the way. It's just down to you if the fringing and the vignetting is going to be an issue for you, but like I say, you can easily fix it in post. Moving on to my main consideration when buying this lens as a wedding photographer is the bokeh. Bokeh? I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce that, but anyway, the depth of field. Can this lens provide a similar subject isolation to a 35mm on a full frame sensor? So I did a side-by-side comparison of the Viltrox and a 35mm 1.8G on a Nikon D600 with some shots of my son pulling some fairly questionable poses. So this is a full-length shot. I didn't move between taking these shots, but the Nikon looks a little wider, which I prefer, and it has a little slightly narrower depth of field, so for me the Nikon wins here. Then I moved in a little closer. Again, the Nikon's a tad wider, but I'm not digging that so much this time. The Viltrox renders the background with a very similar amount of blur, but it's also a lot swirlier, which I quite like personally. So for me, on that one, win for the Viltrox. Lastly, we've got a close-up. I think I might have gotten a bit closer with the Nikon, or its focus breathing or something, as it seems less wide than the Viltrox. But either way, the depth of field seems narrower than the Viltrox, but I still really like the way the Viltrox is rendering all that swirly bokeh, so I'm going to call it a draw for this one. Next I did a close focus comparison, just to see how shallow the depth of field could get. I'm going to dub this one the beer can test. This is perhaps where the lens performs most comparably to the Nikon. The only real difference I can see is the highlights on the Nikon seem more blurred. Boosting the highlights on the Viltrox made the results even closer, but again, I'm going to say this is a close call and I like both the same pretty much. So I'm happy to report that the Viltrox pretty much performs as well as a 35mm on a full frame in terms of subject isolation. The small complaints that I did have, particularly on that first shot, it's not a deal breaker at all. The image quality is also really good. Okay, so the last thing that I'm really going to talk about is the autofocus, and now for photos, there's not really much to worry about here. It's quick, it's snappy. Older series Fujis like the X Pro 1 and X-T1 maybe won't focus quite so quickly, but this lens is quick to grab focus and it doesn't seem to hunt too much. What I was really interested to see was how this lens performs for video when focusing. So I'm going to show you a few clips of my son on the 23mm on a Niwa Steadicam that I recently bought. This is a really cool glide cam style stabilizer that's a really affordable alternative to a gimbal, and I'll be doing a review on it soon. So first, with the wide tracking focus mode, I had Jack walk towards me and then back away. Then I walked towards him with the camera and then back again. Focusing was okay, but when I got closer it started to get a bit jumpy or just not be in focus at all. Next up I did the same with the focus area mode, which gives you a box for your focus area and you can move it around depending on where you want to focus. This was considerably better at holding focus and was much smoother than the wide tracking mode. I did the same with the IAF mode and found this to be somewhere between the wide tracking mode and the area tracking mode. It seems to work better the closer you are, which makes sense as the camera can recognise eyes better the closer it is. So I feel like I got the best results with the area focus mode, so I tried this in 120 frames per second slow-mo to see how that would look. And you'll be able to see more clearly how well it's holding focus while it's tracking. It seems pretty good. I wanted this lens to be good for running and gunning and using autofocus for moving shots, and I think it does a pretty good job. Something I did notice is that the settings within the X-T3 for the tracking and autofocus speed didn't seem to have any effect on the Viltrox at all. I don't know if this is a firmware thing on the Viltrox. Maybe that'll get fixed in a later update. But unlike my Fuji 18-55, which can really control the kind of focus pulling speed, the Viltrox just seems to jump like it does when you're focusing for photos. Overall, it's ticked the boxes of a nice fast aperture and decent focusing for video. So just to finish, for £300 you're getting a really versatile focal length. Quality construction, a nice wide 1.4 aperture that gets you damn close to full frame results, good sharpness and decent video autofocus. If some vignetting wide open and a bit of fringing don't bother you, and that's something that affects lenses like 4 times the price of this one, and I can't really see any reason not to recommend it, particularly for wedding and event shooters or even for video. Okay, so if you found this video useful or entertaining, please give it a like below, leave a comment if you've got any questions, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.